Hello, and welcome to Business with Smith Co. Hello, and welcome back to Business with Smith Co. Today we're going to be looking at a little thing called private limited companies. So, the first thing you need to understand about private limited companies is that they're split into two. So, you've got a private limited company. It basically is, it's limited by shares, or it's kind of a designated activity company. So you have it's a private company limited by shares, which is an LTD or CLS company, or you have a designated activity company, which is a DAC. Now, private limited companies account for most of the companies around the world. This is because, if you're obviously, there are benefits to being a slow trader, there are benefits to being a publicly limited company, but the main point, of course, with private limited company is that you've still got a lot of security over your control over your business. You still got a lot of protection against any things like that, but you don't have to give away shares or anything like that. You don't have to suffer any sort of, for problems if, you've got limited liability and all that sort of thing. So the main area is that you've got the formation, of course, the private limited company. First of all, we're going to look at LTD. So a limited company must have a constitution, essentially. So this contains the name of the company, a statement that it is a company limited by shares and the liability of its members is limited. This document and other registration forms will be sent to a company's registration office, and once the company is registered and once the registrar is satisfied, they can issue a certificate of incorporation. This allows a business to begin trading as an LTD corporation. So then you have the question of liability, because the shareholders of a private limited company have limited liability. This means if the business does fail or there are any debts the business ranks up, they are not personally viable and they can only lose their actual original investment amount. And if they manage to recoup this, let's say business goes bust after 5 years, but within those 5 years they've recouped their business investment, they suffer no losses if the business was to fail. Obviously, you could argue, but they may have suffered no losses. If the business hadn't failed, they might have continued to be able to make money out of it. So there's that, but there's no failure when it comes to your actual situation. Next, you have yourself the question of finance. So capital can actually be raised by selling shares, but it is only to a maximum of 149 shareholders. So while public limited company can sell shares to, basically limitless amount of people, realistically, a private limited company can only sell to 149 different shareholders. Now, profits are distributed to shareholders in the form of dividends. Now, obviously, you could argue, that might be something which you prefer not to do. You might prefer to have a different way of doing things, but that is how the LTD businesses do work. Next, you have control. A private limited company is controlled by the shareholders based on the rule of one share, one vote. The shareholders elect a board of directors, which is then responsible for the running of the company, and they appoint a managing director or chief executive officer. The managing director is known as an MD, and the chief executive officer is known as CEO. Now, while they are responsible for managing the business on a day-to-day basis, the problem becomes when, and this is an issue which actually becomes problematic in a lot of big businesses, which is that they tend to hire a lot of staff because it's necessary. But then what happens is that the CEO will basically then be able to just go, oh, you there, you can do this job, and you can do this job, and you can do this job, and you can do that job, and you can do that job. And what happens there is that sometimes chief executive officers essentially just put all their work onto those below them in the kind of a hierarchy of the business. which, while it is not technically as much of a problem with smaller businesses, because obviously they're risking quite a lot. It doesn't take that much for a smaller business to go out of business. So, if you put too much work on others, then, you're paying yourself, well, then that becomes a fair problem, because, you're basically paying for nothing, and, that can become problematic if it's a smaller business. But if it's a big one, that is a fierce problem. Now, you see, that is one of the things that you might want to consider if you are looking as a CEO. Just beware that if you're a smaller business, this is a stupid thing to do. You will most likely be causing a business to run into the ground. But if it's a big business, just, it may not be the best avenue approach, or it might make your life incredible, because you might not have to do much work, and then, you'd be fine. I mean, it's true that some CEOs do tend to cause businesses their profits to decline because of their lack of working, even though they're taking a high salary. Anyway, so the original shareholders that actually, maintain control of the company, they can hold, as long as they hold 51% of the ordinary share capital, they can maintain control of the company. Now, obviously, if you're a single person who owns 51% of the company, then, you carry a deciding vote. Literally no one can, even if everyone's against you, anti-vote. However, then comes DACs. Now, the thing is, while a LTD business has the title of LTD after the business name, the title of DAC applies to each company. The LTD business only requires one director. The DAC must have two. An LTD business, it has just one single document of constitution. The DAC has to have an Articles of Association, a Memorandum of Association as its constitution. So that takes a lot more effort there. Now, an LTD business, there is no real limit to what its activities the business can engage in. So, for example, this YouTube channel has, factual stuff on business, history, home economics, small bit in science, general facts, all sorts of things. And it's that kind of thing. Like, an LTD business can, have loads of different branches. It can have multimedia, it can have, food, you can have all these sort of different things that they can get involved in. But a DAC business is established for a very specific purpose, and it is not allowed to operate outside that activity. So if you have a DAC business and you say, okay, so the DAC business is currently only providing food, so let's branch off into this completely unrelated area of multimedia, then you're not allowed to do that as a DAC. So you're just not. That business is not operating within the law. However, while you could consider that is a problem, some might say it's more of a sort of thing where, actually, it can be a problem, yeah. But yeah, so an LTD business can have up to 149 shareholders. This is a small problem, because while an LTD business can have 149 shareholders, they don't have to actually, hold any sort of meeting. If you're a shareholder of a company, you may not actually meet with your fellow shareholders, because that may be decided within the business. Because obviously, let's say I invest in multiple businesses and I also work outside of that. I can't be spending loads of time just going off to meetings. So, I might just say, well, this business is to be profitable enough. There's no need to be holding AGMs. But, however, a DAC business, all of those shareholders, unless it's only one shareholder, has to have an AGM every single year. Now, For an LTD business, there is no authorized share capital required. So there's no real limit to the number of shares the business can issue. So obviously that means that, the situation you have is that, you can just sort of keep making shares all the time. So obviously that can water down very quickly, but if you're a DAC business, you must have an authorized share capital. And finally, in my country at least, all financial companies must register as DACs. So that is the end of a very boring video, to some at least, on private limited companies. Please do join us next time when we'll be looking at, mainly what we'll be looking at, unless, there is a bit of a cut-off point where we can't look at more, like we have to look at something else because the video is too short. Cooperatives. So basically, just to end this video, I'm going to say going over the course of this area, we're going to look at cooperatives, public limited companies, state bodies and semi-state bodies, and privatization. Hopefully you did enjoy the video. Please do join us next time. It helps a lot. So does viewing other videos. And please do subscribe to the YouTube channel, because that also helps. Thank you for listening once again. Hopefully we'll see you next time. And if we don't, goodbye. Permanently.